Hello, Floodgate family. We are back for another edition of our Leadership Live event, and I am absolutely ecstatic to have an incredible leader in medical device, a good friend, a great person who's made just incredible impact in orthopedic. Sharon Wolfington, she's CEO and president of Acumed. I know you've been a transitional leader in this space, Sharon, but I don't want to assume everybody knows you. So give us a little insight of who you are, a little of your background. Love to learn.
Sure. Well, first of all, Joe McClung, thank you so much for inviting me. FloodGate Medical, thank you for including me in these Leadership Live sessions. I think it's extremely important to have leaderships, share some of their pitfalls, most importantly, as I'm sure we'll talk about today. So thank you for having me, and a little bit about myself. Where do you want me to start, Joe? I was born in Villanova, Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
So if you're a Wildcats fan, you and I are going to get along well. And I was the third of a family of 7. So I have 6 siblings, 2 sisters and 4 brothers.
Learn to eat fast in a big family. Yeah.
Big family, all pretty close together. 69 cousins, on one side of the family and a bunch on the other. So huge family from the Philadelphia area. And then I went to Miami of Ohio. I was fortunate enough, Title IX started the year that I went to college. So I should note that definitely helped me get my education. I played field hockey for Miami of Ohio. And then basically right after school went into med device, Joe. And I never left. I've been in it for 38 years, and it was the best decision I ever made. My dad told me, figure something out early, stay in it, try to develop some mastery in it, and that will bring value, to that business and to your customers. So I listened to his advice and stayed in it my entire career from right out of college.
That's awesome. And you've had an awesome career from Stryker to DJO, and now the impact you've made at Acumen, plus a lot of other things along the way. Just incredible career. And I think we got the first nugget of advice, in this thing, which is, when you start early and become the expert at it, and you'll be successful. That's great advice, And the wisdom of our fathers, right?
No doubt.
No doubt. So, guys, we're going to be asking some questions. Sharon's going to be opining a lot of great knowledge on us, but I'm sure we're not going to cover everything, and you're going to have questions. Here's the cool thing on this particular event. If you just put into the chat below, into the comment section below, we're going to look at those questions later, and we'll have a few moments to answer some of those questions. Might not be able to get to them all, so put them in early if you have it. So one of the first questions, Sharon, that I'd love to understand, what are the key attributes, do you think, to be really a great leader like yourself in med device?
So I'll talk specifically to med devices just because that's the area that I've lived in for all these years. And, some of these attributes might work for other industries as well. But I do think what's unique to medical devices is a combination, Joe, of drive, right? Most leaders have drive. They deliver outstanding results. But in medical device, compassion and empathy is equal to drive. And, I've seen a lot of people growing up in this business that were incredibly driven. But if you think about it, and I know you're in this industry as well, and you help people recruit top talent in the industry, and that, when you're an athlete and, surgeons, when we connect with surgeons, they're meeting a patient on their worst day. So that patient thought they were like you, paddleboarding from Miami to the Bahamas.
Right. And a shark ate him. Right.
Yeah, hardcore athletes like you, Joe. And, sometimes they get injured. So we really, as leaders, need to connect to that patient experience. Our customers are unique, and we need to have empathy and compassion and try to balance that, and make sure that in everything we do every day, we keep that patient in mind and make sure that every action, yes, we deliver expected results, but every action and every decision we make enables an outstanding patient experience.
Yeah, that's a really interesting fact. You got to have that drive. You got to have that push, that will to succeed, right? All leaders, you have that. But in med device, there's a real impact we're making, and really taking that broader scope of like, hey, we're pushing not just to make that quarterly number, but change a protocol, that patient's life, that worst day, that transition into a better day, right? And not lose sight of that is what I hear you saying in med device.
It's the why, and right behind that. And I know that a lot of the younger generation, I think all employees want to do meaningful work, but specifically this new generation of talent coming in, that's the first thing they want to know. What is the why of your organization? And, what do we do and why are we here?
Yeah.
And, so the second thing I would say for leaders in med device is a commitment to quality. Oftentimes, quality, making those decisions, whether it's staffing up your quality and regulatory team, additional testing, doing your technical files correctly, and making sure that your products are reproducible, high quality, innovative products in the hands of a wide variety of surgeons for, a predictive outcome. And that commitment to quality is not always easy. It sounds much easier than it is. The notified bodies have a lot of requirements, and you oftentimes, have to make critical decisions. But I will tell you this, the cost of poor quality is a disaster, can just completely destroy the goodwill brand of an organization. So in my experience, I have always found putting quality first, having a quality first culture is extremely important for leaders in medical device.
Yeah, it's great. That's really a great point. You mentioned, having experiences and learning. I'm sure there's some things you've learned probably the hard way. Maybe it was quality, maybe it was some of the other things, but here's a chance to eat the humble pie, if you will, Sharon, and talk about what are some of the lessons you've learned that you could share to others so they don't step on that landmine.
Well, I was hoping you wouldn't ask that because, we'd be sitting here for days, Joe.
You don't get 30 minutes, so I'll talk fast, right?
Yeah, I mean, I know we only have 30 minutes, but yeah, I've probably, honestly, I'm being dead honest, I've probably made every mistake there is. And, so I think I'll start with, when you're young, and let's just say in this instance, I started out in sales. So the sense of urgency in sales, when the customer wants something, they want it now. So you don't always appreciate everything that goes into the development, right? The design, the manufacturing validation, the quality and the regulatory components, the marketing messaging. And, you just have that one part of it, which is the selling and the device being where it needs to be, when it needs to be there, and it has to work perfectly every time. So I would say early on, I was impatient and I didn't completely understand everything that went into delivering that device to the customer. And, that was a wake-up call. I was a bull in a china shop when I first went inside from, half of my career being spent out in the field. And I quickly had to learn to pause and reflect, deliberate, and not always, respond so quickly like you have to when you're a sales rep. You got to respond quickly. So you really have to learn a different set of skills. And, I didn't know what I didn't know. So I think a lot of times, most people that are, intelligent or have been successful up to they start their career, they don't know what they don't know. And they bring a level of confidence that probably in that moment and at that time is a little overstated, and so I've learned a lot of humility. I've been humbled by my mistakes. And, I also used to fight through everything on my own. So when I was younger, maybe it's the middle child syndrome, I'm not sure, Joe, but, fighting to make my own mistakes and learn from my own mistakes, get back up to fight another day, keep on going, stay in forward motion. And I learned that by observing my mentors, some of whom I'll mention, Bill Fenton was my first boss, huge mentor. Mike Mogul, who you and I both worked for, I've worked for the majority of my career. Mentor like Ron Lawson, Tim Scammell, Kevin Lobo, more recently Lujan Tucker. I mean, I've been very fortunate. So I learned that if I just ask them, hey, did you ever have this issue, or did you ever have this problem? Or I just observe them and say, I'm just going to watch them and I'm going to see how they handle opportunities and challenges. And I'm going to learn from that instead of fighting through on my own. Right. And then that really extrapolated out to, understanding codependency in medical devices. This industry is complex. There is a ton of codependency. And even now, with our executive team, I am very dependent on the executive team for all the decisions we make.
Yeah.
and understanding you don't have to be on an island. You don't have to make that decision in isolation. You find out where your weaknesses are. And, I have a lot of them, right? So I rely a lot on outstanding talent, in my leadership team to fill those gaps, where I have weaknesses. And I rely on them in a lot of cases, Joe, to make critical decisions.
Yeah. No, I think you bring up some really good points, right? Is take a step back when you don't understand and appreciate the whole company system, and
Yeah.
realize what actually has to come in. I remember being that bull in the china shop myself at several occasions.
You and I both, right, Joe?
Yeah, right.
At the same place at the same time,
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So, and I think having that pause, that time, that reflection, thinking about what it is, seeking to understand what they're going through is crucial. I think your point about finding, having that team around you, whether it's a mentor, whether it's, an executive team that you can rely on for one, advice, but then two, if you're trying to take it all on, right, which is
Yeah.
what you try to do, you become the limiting factor of the organization because you can be good, but you don't have a cape. You can only have so much, right? Those are the three things I heard you really say that, I think a lot of leaders, if they look back and go, yeah, those are core elements that I didn't do. So that's great suggestions. Really great suggestions.
Yeah, I might add, one thing that you and I have in common. We're both activators. We both are high energy.
Yep.
And, even though I say, if I look back on my younger self, I would observe more, I would listen more, I would assume there's a lot I didn't know. I'd pause more, I'd reflect more, I'd be more deliberative, which I am now. But, one of the things I always loved about you when I worked with you at TJO is, we both believed in staying in forward motion. And so I don't want to give the impression as an activator that being an activator or having high energy is a bad thing, because I still believe in that. I still believe in stay in forward motion. Don't be afraid to make mistakes, and you can self-correct along the way. But as long as you're staying in forward motion, because if you get too deliberative, you're stuck. You're standing there waiting to make a decision, and you're not moving. So that's one thing I wouldn't change.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Sure, but don't change it.
I like it's that balance, right? That constant balance act is pause for a moment, but make a decision and go, and realize that not every decision will be right. Like I've heard a term, you've heard this, Getmo, good enough to move on. Dude, are we good enough? That decision is good enough to move on. And if it is, let's go. So
and humble enough to admit when you made a mistake.
I go, that one didn't work.
We have a blast, at Acumed, because all the employees know they can make mistakes because they're in good company with me. I'm just going to say, let's redirect and let's keep moving forward.
Yeah, that's a great attitude. You were talking about your employees, and I'm sure you've got a lot of high level talent, on your team had in the past. How do you develop them? When you see that hypo, that person with potential, what are some of the things you'd recommend for people to develop those high performers?
Yeah, again, it always comes back to what have you learned and who taught you? Lisa Peterson is the head of HR. There's so many individuals, Craig Starkey, who I work with now. Human resources professionals are special. And so I've learned a lot from them, how to develop high performers. And it has become, Joe, one of my favorite things to do. Many of the leaders in med device today, I can name them, Eric Tanweber, Milton Torres is with me now, Tara Vandenberg is with me now, Rachel Edwards, Lisa Thompson, are in, Gary Justak, they are now my peers. And these are people I've developed over time, and they're peers of mine running med device companies, or they're on my leadership team today. So I would say, if you ask me what's your number one favorite thing about your career, it's developing high performers. That has absolutely been a joy for me. And, it really starts, you're in the talent development world, and as you already know the answer, it starts with hiring top talent.
Yeah.
So working with people like yourself, helping to find that top talent. Because if you bring in top talent, you coach them, you support them, and you continue to develop them. So I would say it really starts there. Secondly, I'll share a little bit about specifically what I've always done. I always say to my direct reports, look, we're going to do my job together. And that really speaks to that humility component. I'm acutely aware of my weaknesses, and my lack of knowledge or, my blind spots. So, having awareness of that, you very quickly learn that you're dependent on your executive team. You have to lead together. So when I talk to them about their development plans, I say, look, we're going to do a lot of situational leadership. And if I have a challenge, if I have an opportunity, I'm going to be open, honest, transparent about it. We're going to work through it together. I depend on your solutions. We're going to have healthy debate. And in the end, we're going to come up with a solution and we're going to, stay in forward motion. So I would say situational leadership development, in my personal experience, has been the absolute best way to develop high potentials.
Well, and you created, and I heard you say a couple times, that ability to fail, that open collaboration, that honest humility. It's creating that speed of trust, right? Yeah. Where people know they can push back. They can say the emperor doesn't have any clothes, and it's going to be okay. So I think that's a key lesson that that I hear you saying, that creating that trust in those elements that you've talked about before.
No doubt. Speed of trust is key. I mean, the other way for the people on the call that are developing leaders or hiring, talent for leadership roles. The other best way I have found for other managers other than the executive team, let them step up and lead a major project, like a merger integration or an acquisition due diligence or an acquisition integration. Those three specifically, you really get an opportunity to learn and grow and develop because, the decisions are critical decisions for the organization and you're in charge. So, a lot of the high potential employees that I would have on my succession map, I would want to give them an opportunity like that. Or get them involved in your strat plan process. I mean, at Acumed, we have a core team, and I've been here about 5.5 years. Almost every single person that's been on that core team building that strat plan for the executive team has been promoted. So that was an opportunity for them to build and develop strategy, present it to the executive team, see what they're capable of. And in most cases, we went almost exactly with their strategy. They a lot of talented people. In my experience, when you give them a chance and you just give them some room, they'll really impress you. That's been my experience.
Yeah, I've heard from my mutual mentor, great talent loves great challenges, and they like that opportunity to do so. You mentioned shortly about, finding and evaluating early on, a couple of things. That was if you don't have the raw materials, it's difficult to create that level of greatness. Yeah. So what have you done to find and then evaluate new talent coming into the organization?
Most managers and leaders should always be recruiting. I mean, even if I'm out for a run, Joe, or, I'm sitting there at a restaurant and, the waiter is very cordial. I'm like, have you ever thought about being in sales? So Number one, I think all good managers and leaders are constantly recruiting. But specifically, I've always used a hybrid model. So, the world has changed, internal recruiting and LinkedIn and other places to find talent. But what I have found is you really need a hybrid. For high-level roles, certainly for executive-level roles, almost always use a recruiter because those are urgent to fill. And most recruiters like FloodGate Medical, you guys have a pipeline of talent. I mean, you have people that you're staying in touch with all the time. And likely if I call you, you're going to say, I have 2 candidates, you can take a look at right now. And once you build that relationship, like I would trust you, you would know, I know what Sharon likes. I know what Acumed likes. And you would, be able to specifically go in to that pipeline and select a perfect match. And so certainly for high level, but then also for anything that's urgent to fill, really relying on the recruiter. And then a lot of sales positions because sales positions are hard to fill in my experience, without utilizing a recruiter.
Yeah. And it's your point, dollars and, dollars overall. If there's comments, I see some people are making some comments. We'll check those out shortly. If you do have questions to come in, please put comments below. in this live feed, and we'll be able to pull them here momentarily. Got a couple other questions here. You mentioned a little bit the challenging people and the people that step up. But what are some things you'd recommend for aspiring leaders that they should do? Because we have some people that want to be leaders on this call.
Yeah.
What would you say for the first leadership opportunity?
Yeah, aspiring leaders. Well, first of all, shout out to all the aspiring leaders. I love people that want to lead because it's not for everyone. So first is really, I always say, as soon as you get promoted to VP, I say, congratulations, you've earned the right to be judged by all the time. It's you can't be a leader and assume you're always going to be popular.
Right.
The masses are not always going to agree with the decisions that you make. So, wanting or aspiring to be a leader, I personally think that, it's a higher calling. I do think managing people and being a leader is a calling. There's a lot of souls in your care. Certainly a medical device, is a lot of responsibility. So first, I would say demonstrate within your existing organization, if you want to lead in that one, demonstrate that you understand, appreciate, and mostly care about the mission, vision, values of the company. And that you understand the tactical plan and how that connects to the strategic plan. And understand and appreciate the why behind what you do. So that, I notice people in the organization that do that. I'll give you an example. Employees that will do anything to get an instrument and inventory set in the hands of the sales force or the surgeon or the hospital when they need it, to the fact that they'll drive late at night to the airport to ship it out, or they themselves drive all night long to get it to the location where it needs to be. Immediately, those people, I never forget them. If somebody does something like that, they've shown me they get it. They understand the patient-centric approach. They understand the why. But also, you have to deliver results. So you and I both know, if you're an aspiring leader, the way people recognize you is on a 9-box, right, with your succession planning and your talent development. They show up right in the top 3 boxes. They're identified as a high performer with high potential.
Yeah.
And then third, I would say make it known that you're interested in being a leader. Go to your manager. Yeah. Make it known. And, I always say, ideally, try to be a leader in your own organization. I know that it's popular to move from organization to organization, but going back to the comment earlier, I learned from my dad, if you establish mastery, it's mastery in your craft, but also mastery of the organization you're in. Yeah. And you might think the grass is always greener, but if you know the mission, vision, values, and the why of the company you work for, lock and load. Just because you might not get the opportunity the first time, continue to develop yourself, continue to ask to, run those key projects, put yourself out there. Don't be afraid to fail. Yeah. I know that was a lot, but that's.
I mean, I kind of heard you say key 3 things, which is one, make sure you not only understand the core values and the mission of the company, but you live them. And and you do the exceptional things that go above and beyond, whether, in orthopedics, that's driving that instrument set, right, overnight, but in different companies, that means different things, but, that you're above and beyond. You understand truly what's needed, what that tactical plan is. You can articulate it. And then 3, don't assume that people know what you want to do, right? Ask for that. Hey, I'd love to be in leadership. What do you think I need to learn? Can I follow you? What can I, find great mentors to talk to? So those are some great suggestions to be able to, for those people that, are aspiring leaders. So I'm going to take the last 5 minutes here and pull up some of the questions for the FloodGate family, see what questions they have. Here's one that's good is, what's the best advice you have for women that want to get into leadership? You're one of the female leaders in orthopedics, right? I know you were in many rooms where you were the only female there. So
I know.
What advice do you have?
Yeah, actually, thank you, Jacqueline, because I was hoping somebody would ask this question. I listed out my mentors and not a single one was a woman. But that's just the nature of the industry I grew up in at the age, that I was in. So, I was one of the first female sales reps, first female managers, first female almost everything, along my career. There's not very many female CEOs in medical devices. So, I really want to spend, the latter part of my career being a mentor for women. And the best advice I will say, a classic example, Tara Vandenberg, who Joe,
Yeah.
is now with us. And she reached out to me, asked me to mentor her. We talk once a month, and it's not always that easy to get on, an hour call, but, reaching out and looking for a mentor. And, but also, I would just say it's the same advice for women as it is for anyone aspiring to be a leader. Deliver results, let people know what your aspirations are. A lot of times what I did find is that women kind of wait to be told, okay, you're ready. So most of the women that I've worked with versus the men that I've worked with, a lot of men are very comfortable saying, I want your job. They'll say that right to you. Gary Justak, if you're on the line, I'll never forget, he was a rep. He's now, as you know, running a foot and ankle business, but he said, I want your job. I haven't had a lot of women come up to me and say, I want your job. It's been more me saying to them, encouraging them to, hey, where do you want to go? What do you want to do with your career? So I would definitely suggest that women, be advocates for themselves and not wait and just assume that their hard work is going to be recognized by everyone, because it's just not always the case. I mean, I have half of my leadership team right now are women, and they're there because they deserve to be there, and they've earned the right to be there. So through their performance, they've achieved, executive level roles in a mid-cap med device company. So I'm trying to think of like what they've done to get there. And man, I would just say they're hard worker, work incredibly hard, very, very devoted, go the extra mile, a lot of the same things, Joe, that we talked about earlier. I don't really have something specific to women other than be an advocate for yourself. Don't wait for someone to be an advocate for you.
Well, and I think that's an interesting aspect too, is that asking for it when you're waiting until you're ready, and I think that's a good lesson for anybody, because I can tell you every role I got promoted up to, I wasn't ready to take it, like I was like,
what would you tell your daughter? I know you're interviewing me, but I'm curious. What would you tell your daughter if a piece of advice for her, growing into, her career and leadership when she gets to that age?
I would say is, hey, have confidence in yourself. You're twice as strong as you think you are.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, if she has that belief in her heart, she'll do whatever she wants. That's, to me.
Yeah, I love that.
Like, truly believe that.
Yeah, I love that.
So that, and that's whatever she wants. I don't know if she, like she's 12, so she might not want to do leadership yet, or ever want to do it. I don't know. But whatever that is, just that confidence that you're twice as strong as you think, and be able to boldly walk in, boldly, go into those unknowns, to, come out the other side successful, right?
Yeah,
and
I love that.
Not to learn, right? There's a different way you come out the other side.
Yeah, I would say I should give a shout out, to my mom for that. She always told us there's nothing you can't do, So, I think that's interesting you just mentioned that, because it's subconscious. When you're the child in that, you don't know why you're bold or why you're willing to fight hard and get up again and fight another day. Because, I will tell you, 38 careers had a lot of bumps, in the road. And it's really, a matter of, in some cases, I guess, how you're raised and what people are telling you before you even show up in your career.
Yeah.
So that's a great advice for parents out there, to build that. What you just said, I thought was beautiful. Parents of young girls and women.
I appreciate that. Hopefully that works. And last question, and we're going to close it out here. Yep. What do you recommend someone's coming into a large organization, kind of in that, in the beginning, right? How do they start right is how I kind of read this, but with the goal of getting into management later on. So they're brand new, they're getting in. anything different you would tell this individual versus what you might have, said to someone who wants to get into management?
Well, that's Yannick Lang. First of all, congrats on getting your MBA. So you're already, made a good step because you're going to be differentiated. Not everyone in sales has an MBA and would have that formal experience. So you're asking a question, but you already are on the path, I would say, because you took that step to get your MBA. Again, it really comes back to if you're a sales rep and you're helping the marketing team members build their marketing campaigns, being that voice of the customer in that feedback loop for design and development of new devices, for building marketing campaigns. It's extra work, right? You're a sales rep and you're already busy, especially in med device. You're on call 24/7. But if you go the extra mile, I'm stealing your term, Joe, because I know you've mentioned extra mile a couple times.
Yeah.
You go above and beyond, you go the extra mile to collaborate with the team members internally in the company in which you work. And then you ask them to be part of a management trainee program. Find out if there is one, and then ask them if you can be part of it.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. I mean, it's sticking that hand up early, right?
Yeah.
Leaning in and realize, hey, if I got an idea, you see an initiative, take it. Be bold, right? Kind of comes back to that. So we are up on time. I want to thank everybody that has joined us. Thank you, more importantly, Sharon, for really blessing us with your time, your education, your inspiration. And I'm sure your message today will land on some aspiring leader, current leader, someone that might be beating themselves up for making mistakes, then realize everyone's done it. Wherever it does, hopefully it makes that impact. And I appreciate the time. And thanks to everyone for joining this edition of Leadership Live. Thank you.
Thank you.